God said he will come through, yeah. Said I woke up this morning with problems on my mind. Didn't know what to do, I wasn't feeling so fine. So I put on some music and you know what kind of gospel music with anointing really suits my mind. It was like a prescription that the doctor prescribed. Felt the Holy Spirit moving way down deep inside. So I picked up my hands and I started to smile, cause Jesus changed my situation. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, hey, happiness in my soul. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, oh yeah, happiness in my soul. So many people feeling down right now, cause the money in the pocket is like a dry ground. It's getting rough now. You're living from hand to mouth, you're feeling depressed. There is no hope in tomorrow. If I had hope in this world, I would be miserable. I'm trusting God, it makes my life more comfortable. Don't worry, God is in control. His presence gives us peace and take it as the rose. I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, happiness in my soul. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, yeah, happiness in my soul. Said this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Said this joy that I have, Jesus gave it to me. Said this peace that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Said this peace that I have, Jesus gave it to me. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, happiness in my soul. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, happiness in my soul. Jesus, my hope is in you, Lord. Yes, oh yes, I trust you every day. Lift your hands and sing. Now I feel joy, yes, happiness in my soul. Lord, when I have you, I feel joy, happiness in my soul. Lord, you're great, Lord. Happiness in my soul. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Yeah, happiness in my soul.
Blessings, guys, and welcome. Welcome to another Sunday afternoon of Team Family. I am back. It's myself and my husband. So we're the Sabbies here this afternoon. We are your hosts for today on Team Family. And remember what Team Family is all about. Together, we encourage, affirm, and motivate families. All right, so the Thompsons are not with us today. Adonna is not here today. But we are going to go on, and we also have a very special guest waiting to come on in just a bit. All right, but it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful time in the presence of the Lord. We're going to have a wonderful discussion today, as always. So remember that it's not just about us having the discussion. We want you to be a part of this. So remember, whenever you feel like it, you can type in a little text. You can share something that you would like to share. You can ask a question. All right, so feel free. All right, so whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, whether you would like to text privately, remember our number is 403-1031. That's 403-1031. If you would also like to call in, feel free also. You can call us on WhatsApp, or if you want to call directly, the number is 231-1031. All right, so guys, our topic today is very interesting. Very, very interesting. It's for married couples. Those of you also thinking about getting married, you can also benefit from this conversation. Today we're talking about sexual intimacy in marriage. All right, so be a part of what we're doing here. And we have a very special guest, as I said before, well, very special guest. All right, in the background, I'm going to bring them on screen. All right, I'm going to bring them on screen right now. So welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Are you hearing us?
Yes, loud and clear, and well, and thanks. Glad to be here with you this
All
evening.
right.
Just a second, sir. Can I
Good
just
afternoon to the Sabizans, as well, sorry, Team Sabizans,
yeah, good
and
afternoon. Just a
the
second, sir. Can I
online
just say
listeners and viewers
let me
of
adjust
Hope
your
FM. We're glad to
hold
be
on.
here. Team
All right,
Philip
just a second.
representing this afternoon.
All right, just a second. Let me just adjust your mic setting for you, because I believe you'll have
Yes. A little echo.
echo
Just
going
1
on.
minute. Just 1 minute. All right. Sorry about that.
Hold on, not done yet.
Okay.
Good. So it's not. It's the echo has been cancelled. Nice, wonderful.
Yes, echo has been canceled. So you should be hearing, well, everybody should be hearing you very nice and clear right now. So as you can see, for those of you who are on Facebook or on YouTube, we have Pastor Joachim Philip and Sister Linda and Philip with us this afternoon. Welcome to Team Family. Welcome to Hope FM. Although you're not physically here, but we want to warmly welcome you to Team Family. As I said before, Team Family is our program on Hope FM Grenada that speaks to family relationships. It helps with building of family relationships. And we are so glad and happy that you have taken the opportunity to be with us this afternoon to discuss this very important topic of sexual intimacy in marriages. For the last couple of weeks, we've had several different discussions ourselves along with the Thompsons. We've been speaking about different things pertaining to marriage. And we know that this topic is also very important to marriage. So we want to be able to gain a lot of knowledge from this. So those of you out there listening, tag a friend. Well, maybe not tag, but at least share the stream with them. Let them know that Team Family is on and a very interesting topic this afternoon. All right. So we look forward to hearing from Pastor Joachim and Sister Lindarin. And again, I want to say a warm welcome to you. All right.
Thank you so
And
much.
Thank you. Thank
we're
you
going to
very
give you the full screen. We're here in the background and we're going to throw in a little question here and there. We have viewers that are listening and we have the chat available. So if we see a question come in or a comment, I hope
I
it's
think
okay that we can interrupt here and there just
I
to,
think
much.
he'll
Yes.
be able to see the chat
all right?
at the same time, right? You can see the chat, right?
Yes. On
Yeah,
the
I'm
right
seeing
hand.
it.
All right.
Great.
So once you have any other persons WhatsApping us or so, we'll let you know. But also we'll be asking questions. I'll be asking all the questions, I believe.
Yes.
You know?
All right.
So, here we go. All right.
All
So
right.
welcome again, guys.
We're going to give you the full
Thank you.
screen, but just know that we're here in the background.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
great.
All
All
right.
right.
All right. So again, it's always a pleasure, privilege to be with anything to do with family and teams, and so my wife and myself, we have been working at this team uh, concept, and also the concept of nakedness, and so it falls directly into what we are doing. And so we're talking about sexual intimacy in marriage, and I want to make sure I qualify it in marriage.
Yes.
So it's not sexual intimacy for everybody, even though you might learn before, but it is a topic that will create an environment where we have what you call some sensitive things to discuss, and I want to keep it very open and candid, I believe, and there's reasons for that. We believe that God is the creator of sex, and so we believe that he is the one to best help us and walk alongside with us in this journey. What we also want to say on the onset that we are not sex therapists and we are not sex experts, so we don't prescribe things that you and so that you don't say we are prescribing something for you. We, based on the research that I have done in relation to the biblical model of sex, I realized that the Church of Almighty God is the best place, and we supposed to champion the whole issue of sex and sexuality. We left it, but we are supposed to champion that cause. And I believe the time is coming when we can no longer stay quiet on it, because there's so much perversion of it that we have to share the truth on the matter from a biblical perspective. All right, so I pray that you would, as we go along, you would have, well, whatever questions, whatever that you would want us to share, you can do so. Put it in the chat or interrupt. We will take it up from wherever we left off. All right.
And like my husband said before, and good afternoon again to those of you who are viewing or listening to Hope FM. As he said before, we basically will be speaking about some nakedness that I know that was mentioned last week. And as we make mention of that, we want you to be open enough to ask the real questions, those that you may not necessarily ask anybody else, but you might keep for yourself and probably have been struggling for a long time. Feel free to ask, and as best as we can, we are going to respond to you.
All right. So let's do some foundational things. So I'm going to make some declaring statements that you would have to understand. So first of all, sex in marriage is not dirty. Sex in marriage is not seen by God as dirty and sinful. The Bible says the marriage bed is honorable. It's undefiled. It means it is high. It's kept in high esteem by God, and so it's something that God sanctioned and that God placed perimeters on. And so the perimeters is for our safety. It was meant for our safety because it is one of the most powerful thing that God would have given unto humans to experience. And so God would have put perimeters to protect it and to allow us to enjoy it in the joy that he would have created. And so I want to start from there. And then we must foundational, you go back to Genesis. Genesis chapter 4 and verse 1 was the first place that sex was mentioned, but they used a euphemism. Many of you would know what that means. It is just a word to soften the word that is intended to because it might sound a little harsher. So instead of putting Adam had sex with his wife, he said Adam knew her and she conceived, right? So they put a word that creates that environment where we have that understanding of God's purpose. But before that, we saw in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24 and 25, we saw that the Bible talks about the fact that the man and the woman, they joined together with their wife and they both became one flesh. And the Bible says, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. So their nakedness was not a shameful thing to them. Their nakedness was not an embarrassment. Their nakedness was not something that we understand to be that we have a shyness or I don't know what you are, who you are, and physically and attractive and all of that. It was just an open, peaceful, joyful experience that Adam and Eve had as it was in the garden. And so the nakedness, and we talked about the nakedness, about the spiritual nakedness, emotional nakedness, psychological nakedness. But this one today we're focused more on the physical nakedness, because the others are spiritual nakedness, emotional and psychological. But what I've found is that all of them hinge on each other. So, because of the emotional nakedness, the ability to share and to be able to talk to each other and open with each other, you would notice that it will heighten other areas of your relationship. So your communication will be better if you have that nakedness as it relates to emotionally, you connect with your spouse, and spiritually, you connect with your spouse, and you realize that you're able to share freely, whether it is a struggle or something that you're dealing with. You're able to share and not feel condemned or judged, but you have to create that environment. And I must say, a lot of relationships, that environment was not created, so people don't feel at ease to share deep stuff. So communication is on a surface level, and whenever communication is on a surface level, you can have true intimacy. True intimacy only happens when you start digging down into deep communication and conversation, where you expose yourself to the person in a way that you know that that person know you. You become known. So over the time in your relationship, you're known. One of the challenges is that we must establish this early in the relationship. I try to ask persons to become intimate as it relates to their communication, being free to say and share what you're feeling, despite a lot of the times you may feel like the person shouldn't hear that or shouldn't know that. But if you're going to spend your rest of your life with this person, the better thing to do is to undress before them. And as you undress, you become more exposed to them, and you become more attractive to them, because here's why. Every single one of us is, as we call it in the 80-20 principle, we have 80% of what the other person needs, and 20% of some things that might challenge the relationship. What we do is we focus on the 80% and not on the 20%. Because if you focus on the 20%, you could always bring up some problem, some confusion, some issue. But if you focus on the 80% of what that person has, and enlarge that and expand that and focus on that, what you're actually doing is creating an environment where strengths are boasted about and weaknesses are strengthened. So you help each other with weaknesses, but you boast about your strengths. And
Pastor
together,
Martin, can I just interrupt for just a minute? I
yes,
just thought that point was so it came home to me in terms of the getting emotionally and so undressed at first. I mean, pouring out yourself before your spouse, because I think in marriages or people getting married, people thinking about getting married, the whole idea is okay, it's just a physical thing, but it's so important for us to understand that there's so much more to this physical union. If you would just, strip yourself emotionally and psychologically, all these things before your spouse, you can have all these conversations and be free. Be open
right.
before them before you actually get to that physical place. I think that is such an important point there. I just wanted to bring it home because I think it's so important that as couples we understand that it's not just about the physical union. There are things leading up to that. Thank you so much for that point.
You're welcome. Yeah.
And even as you would have made mention of that, for persons who are looking to get married, premarital counseling is where the undressing should start. That they're nothing to
Emotion.
the
Oh, yeah.
emotional, nakedness should start, so
Yes.
that persons would not get into the marriage wondering, what is this? Where did this come
Yes.
from? But
Yes.
you start, at least you start there, so they know, okay, this is what I'm about to face, and we are going to go through this, undressing,
Right.
because that's what we do when we get married. We
Yes.
undress. We come with stuff and we undress. There are things we leave outside. There are things we take in, because we are creating our own unit now, whereby we coming from different homes, different backgrounds. So
Right.
so important that we recognize that very
Oh
early.
yes. Oh yes.
Yes, and so I and that is one of the reasons why I am so passionate about this, because what would have happened in the past is that the focus of marriage and the youthfulness and sex and sexuality was more on the physical aspect, and persons would have never shared with you that, wait, the physical aspect is the outward expression of what is already happening inside of you.
Correct.
So you're already naked. I mean, even though you have on clothes, you're already naked with each other. So when you go
Yes.
into the bedroom, it is an explosion of what is already taking place. And so God intended that, and that is why I believe the garden and the foundations are really important. Naked and not ashamed, because in the garden, Adam and Eve didn't have no issue with their physical nakedness. They didn't have no issue with their spiritual, until sin came. We know what happened, and it just messed up the whole beauty of what God is doing and has been doing with them and through them in their marital relationship. And so the reality then came about where the intimacy kind of broke down, because now they started hiding and started blaming and started doing all these emotional things. When you think that that would not affect your marriage, it affects your marriage. Once you
That's
start
right.
blaming, a woman, for example, is emotionally wired. So if something happens to her in the morning, and I'm speaking generally for as married couples here, if something happened to her in the morning, she heard a friend of hers meeting an accident, and you have some problem, or something happened with their family member or whatever, that day, a sensitive husband will know that physical intimacy might be at a low at that time, because she's dealing with an emotional issue. So you see the tie. There's a tie in the thing, and
True.
sensitivity would say, okay, not today, even though I'm ready to go. Men are always often ready. Um,
Always.
I'm ready to go. But his sensitivity, understanding that the emotional aspect of my wife at this point is not necessarily at its best. So I can sit by and help and walk alongside and nurse back to wholeness emotionally, sometimes, most times, and then you have your expression, and it's because it's your wife. It's not a temporary thing. So it's not like next week she gone somewhere, but because it's your wife, it's for life. And so there are times when you have to be, as a male, you understand
Sensitive.
those sensitivities as how God made us different. But we have to come to the place then where we understand, in moving towards sexual intimacy in marriage, there's a lot of other things that play right now. We are not going to, as I said, because it's not sex therapy, we are not going to go into some of the aspects of emotional baggages coming from the past, because there's some people coming to marriage with some emotional issues, and that hinders the bedroom from being what it should be. Then there's some people that have trauma from some bad relationship or something,
Experience.
an experience, and so they can't bring themselves to having an expression of sexual intimacy in the room. Now, the power of this is so important for us to understand, because when God made it, there was no shame attached to it. And that, for me, when that hit me, as I was studying the passage of naked and not ashamed, when that hit me, I say, oh God, why is it that we left this then up to the unsaved man
Yeah.
to try to educate us about something he don't have the connection spiritually to
Oh
be
yeah.
able to do? So if I want information from an unsaved man about sex, I would want to go biologically, because the probably personal medical doctor, and he might be able to give me some sort of counseling and what to do, what to eat, and how to keep my body so that I'm able to satisfy my wife. But on the aspect of spirituality, it was God. And sometimes I laugh at it, but it was God that made the penis and the vagina. And so God is the one, anybody make anything, they're the best person to go back to when you're having any challenges with it. But I think the church, what we would have done over time is we create a kind of shame over that topic that we hardly discuss it at all or never go into it. And what happens is a lot of people struggling in the congregation and they're not enjoying their sexual life, they're not enjoying intimacy in their home, they're not enjoying, and they come to church, lift hand, worship the Lord, and go back home, and still is because we would have left that up to the person that don't really know the real connection and power. Now, this thing is so powerful. If you go back into the Bible, the wisest man was fell, the strongest man fell. So you have to understand the power of this, of sex and sexuality. And that is why God decided, I'm going to put some parameters on it. I'm going to make sure that you could explore it and enjoy it, and it be a joy for both parties inside of marriage, because that is the place that you could unleash it. I give you permission to have what I bless you with. So this is a blessing that we got from God. Outside of worship, that is the other highest expression of human intimacy. So when we worship God is the highest, and then sexual intimacy with spouse, we create that environment also. So God sanctions this, bless this, and gives it as a gift to every couple that chooses to follow his mandate. However, because sex of itself is powerful and enjoyable, it is then used by an enemy to destroy relationships instead of build relationships. So we have to understand that we're not bringing a one-side argument and understanding. It is powerful in and of itself. It's like giving a 5-year-old a loaded gun to play with. I mean, they don't know what to do with it, but they could kill somebody and kill themselves because it's loaded, but at the same time, they don't know how to manage this loaded. And so sex in itself is powerful, and God is the one that gave it its authority and power. But he then comes and say, after the fall, he said, I want you to only use it in these parameters in a marriage, because here's what, you're not mature enough to deal with it outside of that. So in the Caribbean, for example, we experimented with sex a lot before we got married and we damage ourselves in the process, we damage other people because we experimented with something that is powerful and not understanding it's sacred and where it's supposed to be. And so when I saw that from the Bible and investigating and this from a biblical perspective, I realized, wow, the enemy would have unleashed a great deception on us to say that we must not discuss sex in church. In other words, he say, you don't have knowledge about it, you don't know about it, let me tell you about it, when he's not the creator of it. And I say, wow, that thing hit me. And so
it goes back to the word of God, Pastor. Sorry to interrupt, but it goes back to the word of God, where God says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, things that you don't understand and know. You know, you treat it in one way, you don't know what to do about it, and then you perish because you don't know.
I would like to add, something you mentioned in terms of the experimenting.
Yeah.
Funny enough, there are married couples still experimenting because they don't know. You understand? They do not know. So when I say they don't know, they got married with an idea of what it's supposed to be like and how it's supposed to work. And just because of that idea and the idea is a wrong idea, the same idea is causing a lot of damage. So sometimes both persons are misled, and you have misunderstanding where one person not satisfied and the other person don't know how to communicate that, and that's your business, and you can sense all this kind of unnecessary arguments coming up when they are not looking at, okay, how can we better make this intimate time more about us and the education that is needed. So there are young persons who get married at 21 and so on, and we're not saying it's bad, but they should be educated on those things. And sometimes these are the conversation that is left out. You understand?
Because
As you
again, it's
said,
like a taboo.
people
We don't talk
people
about it.
people in it for the physical and not necessary for the spiritual. You understand? They
Right.
want to be free, but they're not really free because they don't have the knowledge to be free, to the knowledge of what God word says and how this thing's supposed to be. You understand? So very good point that you made there. I just wanted to put a little bit of
Yeah.
honey on top of it.
Sport.
But even too with extra experimenting, you can see it on the flip side as well. And that of two persons coming together has no idea, because we do have persons getting married that are virgins and they have no idea. That sort of experimenting can be very much exciting. That you're learning things together, you're discovering things together, you have things to laugh about together when you get older, because it's like, remember when, comes up, because we created this. So us, we created this.
Mhm.
And those sort of experiments now are completely different from those that we were making mention of before.
Yeah,
Sure.
And
to me,
when
yeah.
you have that sort of experience, it actually brings you closer to your spouse.
Oh
Right.
Yeah.
yes. Oh yes.
I know of some persons that do not have discussions so they might be in a group of ladies, and when sex comes up, they go quiet, and you may find why is that person not saying anything, but there could be different reasons again, and I'm learning as I go on that there are different sides to everything. So somebody may be having a bad experience in their bedroom, so they do not wish to share, while somebody else may be having such an excellent time that they're still not wishing to share. Peradventure, certain questions are asked and so on. So, it goes both ways. But the whole thing is that God Himself expects us to have enjoyable, good sex. And not just that the man is satisfied and at the end of the day, the lady is saying, what just happened? Or vice versa. But He expects that we both understand that we are there to satisfy each other. And as we go on later, we would include, to those of us ladies who have our cycles, we would remind you that our men also have a cycle. And my husband will give you more information about that one, right? So, ladies, those of you who are married, who are listening, and those who will be married soon, know that our men also have their cycles. And ladies, though ours may be 28, 30 days going there, our men are on the 7. So you know what happens. We can't blame them. That's just how they're wired. Yeah.
Yep, yep. Yeah. And so and so it and so it is God then that would have created the sex, the understanding that a man is always, as my wife was saying, always ready. I mean, as Doctor, I can't his name, I'll recollect it just now. Dr. Gill was saying that men's cycle is 2 to 5 days. So every 2 to 5 days, a man is ready. And why biologically there's 400 million sperms jumping around inside of his body, and they want to come out. And so it is biologically is also going to affect the person. And so that's why sometimes you say men have a lot of sex, or a woman might complain, oh, this man always wants sex. I don't know what I'm to him, like he have a demon or something, and all that. And so you're trying to figure out, well, what's going on. But when knowledge is power, and so you when a spouse understand, listen to me, even though I am not in the mood, or I'm not, I know my husband have a cycle, and for me, satisfying him is my priority. And so even if I am not ready to go, as they say all the time, ready to go, I am going to do things. And there are a lot of there's oral sex, there's fondling, there's other ways to make a person have an ejaculation or erection. But the reality is, when it's done in partnership, when it's done under God's understanding that, hey, this is a gift from God to us, so that we become closer to each other in this intimate expression. And so God wants husbands to be sensitive to their wife, and He also wants the wife to be sensitive to their husband's needs. and both parties being sensitive, good sex occur when there is that sensitivity of the sexual expression. All right. So as a result, now, if a man is doing his part of the equation, in Ephesians, we have where God said that you have to sacrificially love your wife. Husbands, love your spouse, love them, take care of them sacrificially, make sure they're good, make the woman the best version of herself, and you would get some expressions you would never imagine. Actually, any relationship, and I can say this with no apologies, any relationship where there is fear and intimidation, sex becomes work. Any relationship where there's fear and intimidation, so it's either the woman freed the man or the man freed the woman, that freedom to express, that freedom to be open and to be understanding and to enjoy compassion and passion, it goes out the door, because you cannot fear and love in the same equation. Fear, the two of them, one drives out the other. And so I sometimes say, you know what? If a man creates the environment where love, as God spoke of it, where true love is experienced in a home, a wife is feel free. She will. There's nothing she will hold back from her husband. But once there is that intimidating, fearing, managing abuse, whether it's verbal or physical, all of that, you create an environment where you're not enjoying something God asked us to enjoy. Clearly. And so from the biblical perspective, I get to understand and realize from reading that if God wanted us to really connect, what did he use for us to read? It's the same thing he used for him. He says we must first love him so that we connect, and then we must love each other and neighbors ourselves so that we could connect. In the minus love and intimacy, we really, human beings, will just be doing work. Everything will be like a labor, like because there's no emotion, there's no feeling, there's no connection, and so God intended for this thing to be connecting, and that is why he asked men in Ephesians. He says, love your wife and sacrificially make sure that you take care of her, so much so that she would in turn respond to you with reverence and respect. And he said, Paul said, so that your woman respect your husband and that the man love your spouse. So the two things God placed in there so that we can create an environment where we enjoy our marriage and our children and ourselves. All right. And as we go into the nakedness, and I want to stay there because that is the topic that as we go into the nakedness.
Before you go forward, we have a question from one of our listeners. Can I go ahead and read? All right. It says, because of the ignorance associated with the word sex, and how it's portrayed in movies, etc., it has become a dirty word and something to be ashamed of. So how does the church restore the purity of sex? That's the question.
Powerful question. Because it's our duty now to call people back to sexual purity. And we can only do that because our Father created sex. So we can only do that because we should be knowledgeable about sex and sexuality, because it's God that created. Now, let's not be naive also. A large percentage of the population and people that probably might listen or hear don't believe in a God. So in their mind, they would experiment with it until they find what is satisfying for them. All right. And so, and that is why there's so much perversion, because you're using something, you don't know how to use it. You're just pushing it to its limit, and you're trying to push it all direction until you take it out of its context, out of what it's supposed and meant to be. And you bring it into some context that Romans talk about. You start abusing yourself and becoming violent and abusive to others. And there's all of these different forms of sex now, and all of these kind of things that are very painful. And it was never meant to be channeled out into all of these perversions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because a person using it just find this is exciting, this is nice, this is powerful, but I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to just stretch the limit of it. And so the question asked, I believe we have to go back to having marriage seminars.
Yeah.
We need to have serious, as churches, and not just one church or two churches doing it, because we have marriage seminars at church and the couples feel free to discuss anything, because we believe marriage is sacred and it's honorable, and God intended for every single marriage to work.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
God's intention. His original intention is that every time he puts two people together, that it would have a 100% success rate. So God did not intend for all of these painful experiences that people are experiencing with brokenness and broken marriage and broken relationships and all of that. That's not God's intention, but we know evil came into the world, and where there is evil, there's always going to be things that are going to cause problems. Now, so marriage seminars is one of the aspects I believe every church, every pastor should go to the scriptures, because the thing is not far. My knowledge of sex and sexuality came from the Bible. And why? And I must give you the backdrop to that. I grew up not understanding what it is and not understanding. And so like every young man, you're experimenting, you're coming up in life, you them fellas, and then you had them fellas on the blocks telling you all kind of thing about how to do and what to do. And these days they put songs. So it's violent now and very destructive. The way I hear it's described in some of these music, it's shameful to hear and listen, because I know the intention of God is greater than that. But you experiment, you do all kind of things, you damage people in the process and your own heart and your own life, because you have the tear. Once two persons come together, so there's a tie that happens, and then you have to tear that, and then you're moving on for somebody else. And so with that, I felt, God must have an intention. Since he is the creator, he must have an intention for sexuality, the most powerful thing that he made outside of worship. And I said, let me just start investigating. So I started investigation, go to Genesis, go to mention where the Bible mention about sex and sexuality and love, and realize that God's intention, everything he made is good. Man pervert the thing, but everything God made is good. And so outside of the context, I realized, okay, as I am growing up, hurting myself, I struggled with pornography at some point, and pornography is so deadly and dangerous that it turns an individual into a piece of meat. Like all you see is an experience. All you see when you watch a woman, all you see from her is an ejaculation or some excitement or some flair. And you say, oh gosh, look at how I'm degrading a person. I'm bringing a person down to meat, like just something for me to satisfy or me to get satisfied with. And I said, wow, this thing is destructive when it gets into the wrong hands. And so the expression, after God brought my deliverance, I used to share it a lot at youth camps and youth, because I feel young people need to understand that is a very destructive thing if you continue doing it. And as I said in 2019, I believe, 2009, I was looking into, I think we were involved in, there were these arcades and these computer cafe, internet cafes started coming out. I think it was either before that or after. And I saw a young man from school come on one of the computers, and he was just there, just looking. And I said, if we don't stem this, we're gonna have a lot of perversion and rape and all these kind of things, because I know what the power of pornography. Pornography reprograms your brain. It takes away from you and changes the way you see life, the way you see sex, the way you see sexuality, the way you see a woman generally, and the way you see pleasure in that regard. And so God had to I had to go through that experience of cleansing and washing, and then come to the place where now I have to relearn a lot of things. And I think that's what had happened. In answer to the question, there's a lot of relearning to take place, because a lot of the things we learn from the blocks or from the fellas that just go around the place throwing themselves around the place, we learn wrong things and don't even know what a woman needs are. We don't even, they don't teach us what that is as you growing up. So we just feel I get married and I'm just having sex. It's just like natural, and not understanding there's much more to that whole relationship of creating an environment, creating a place, creating an atmosphere. The woman feels free, because when a woman is free, then is when you get true and genuine sex. You can't experience genuine sex unless a woman is free. The rest is a performance. Anything else is a performance.
So two things.
When you have genuine love, affection, and this is when you experience true expression of sexuality. So we have to get with the seminars. We have to start teaching our young people the value of sex. And I think that is where it starts. The value of sex. Now you have something very powerful you're carrying around, and you can get into some relationship with somebody, and because you are bombarded on the left, the right, the center, anyway you turn now is something naked, something perverted, something. So you have this saturation of young people being squeezed. They have to now know the true value and meaning of what sex is. So it's not a toy, it's not something you just play around with. It's something that you learn from a biblical perspective, where it fits into your relationship and how it fits into your relationship. And also, the church now has to champion the cause for what it means to have to protect the marriage institution, where, because it's now being rewritten, the laws are being rewritten to accommodate all the different types of relationship. We have to champion that cause, so that we are the ones saying this is what God established and this is the best model.
That's right.
Better another model. All right. Sure. Then so we are going to be the ones having to do that. And if we start doing that and pastors becoming more vocal about it, right. and it's too hidey about the whole thing. Now I understand that sex is not a public event. So I understand that's why pornography is so dangerous. That was never meant to be just a public something you're walking down the road and see in front of you. It was never meant to, because that interferes with the human nature and the human being. It is a private event. It's something you do behind closed doors. So making love, sex, it's a closed door something. So I'm not advocating people just being so free that they go anywhere and any place.
But another thing I think that could help with the whole restoration process for the church. I mean, pastors themselves, as both you guys have quite a bit. I mean, you have to deal with seminar, you have to take care of a church. You have quite a bit. So I think what needs to happen also is persons within the body. There may be married couples who might be interested in that type of things, like my wife and myself, for example. We can, educate ourselves in that place, even if it takes both of you guys saying, here's what, both of us are interested in that. And then we find to other person we mentor so they can teach. So we have point persons rather than you put in the weight and the pastors alone. Because it's just a particular area is not preaching on a Sunday morning, but is, get to, you have this group. So if you create, as we know, disciples that will then take that message to the broad spectrum of people within the body, it will help in a great way. And the last thing I want to add is someone just made a comment here, a partner of mine, and he said the point of being naked in all aspects, emotionally, etc., think will take some time to really execute, but he fully agree. And the time thing is good. Obviously, everything will take time, but we're not saying okay, well, I guess it may sound that way to some people because they may have never heard it like that before, so it may be new to some people. So obviously now the eyes of their understanding is open. So it's like the question is in my head now: how do I go and then try to be naked to my wife, or how does my wife now be naked to me? Where do we start? So can you like kind of elaborate on how someone should initiate that process of nakedness, so to speak? I mean, it was already initiated in the Bible, but just to help somebody this afternoon, if you can just give her 2 points as to
Okay.
how they can be naked and what exactly
It
on where
means.
exactly.
What
You
it
understand?
means.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's
So earlier I would have made mention about premarital counseling, but however, we know that many couples do not go through premarital counseling. They may just go to the pastor and say, we are getting married on this date." And basically they get married, right? One of the things that is very important, though, is that communication, your communication level, your effective communication within your marriage would help with the becoming naked. We know we're on a program this evening that is called Team Family, and being on any team time would allow us to work together to become the winning team or the successful team or the team that doesn't function very well, right? And communication is one of the ideal things that would help a couple to become naked and not ashamed. So, for instance, as women, we tend we may have a problem, and we did not say anything to our husbands, but we react. We give a quiet mode, or we frowns up, or we stoops, or we just start quarreling. And in his mind, what is happening? And the fact that we're not saying anything has that man in a place where he's wondering, well, what did I do? All it takes for us as ladies to do is just say, listen, this is what is happening with me. I am not feeling well, or somebody on the job did something. My husband made mention of it earlier about us being emotional. And there are times for instance, I may come home and I'm throwing a fit, and my husband would say, okay, so I didn't get you mad today, right? And when I hear that, I know I need to offload on him, let him know what's going on. And that came with time, because before I would just react for a few days, right? And in learning as time went by, that when I communicate what is happening with him, he gives me a different response. It brought me to a place where I recognize that I don't need to act up. I don't need to not say anything. There are times when, for instance, I may just wake in the morning and he's awake, and I would just start talking, or he may just start talking, or probably before we put our heads down in the night, again, just talking. We call it pillow talk, but it's a case of just talking. Sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, we're just laughing out in our house because we're talking, and sometimes, and not just sometimes, as a Black people, we tend not to communicate very effectively. And sometimes it's because of what we have learned from our family of origin. We heard the quarrels, we heard the back and forth, and really and truly nothing was solved when we saw that. And sometimes we carry it into our marriages. But as we're thinking about team family, we have to remember that if it is that we are trying to build something, it must have a strong pillar. Yes, we know Christ is at the center. He is the one helping us to become that successful team we ought to be. We still need to be able to have something else that would help keep us together. And communication, effective communication, is one of those things. And even as the Bible says, as it relates to the man having to love his wife, God knows that men, there's an issue with love. So he would ask a man to love his wife. And some men may say, I'm doing my best, but is your best good enough according to what God asked you to do? And the question is as well, have you been asking God how to love that woman? So for instance, Sister Sabazan, my love language might be different from yours. My husband can love me like how you would want to be loved. So he would have to find out from me through communication again, what it is, Lindarine, that keeps you going, that makes you tick, that makes you, and he may not even need to ask. Sometimes he paying close attention. Recently, my husband and I had the surprise for him, and I was surprised that he was surprised, because he's always paying attention. was nothing that misses him. But I was so happy that this one missed him, and he did not realize that surprise was planned. And at the end of the day, you get that sort of teamwork and nakedness where you can just open yourself and share. You share your good days, you share your bad days, you share your good moments, your bad moments. But in it all, you're asking God how to love this woman. Yeah. And you communicate that. You see her show it out. You hear her speak it out. You hear her say, I love unique things. Hello. Do not go in the store and get her the same thing everybody else have. Because she said it. She love unique things. I'm a tall woman. Do not go and get me something that basically all the short ladies are wearing. It would not fit me very well, and it would make me very awkward. And when you come with it, I may not accept it as you expect. So then you get vexed now, right?
Yes.
But I communicated, hey, I'm a tall lady, so it makes me an expensive woman. Here's why. Because with tall clothes, it's more expensive than the ordinary clothes. So my husband knows that, hey, I have been married to an expensive woman, right? And not that because she's saying, give me the money. But because of my nature, this is who I am. So you're paying attention. That is communication as well. Yeah. How does the people who cannot speak communicate? They use sign language. Am I correct? Right. So we have to pay attention, gentlemen and ladies too, and also speak as it relates to having to know how I would basically become naked before my husband or wife. And again, as I said, it takes time. And not just time, but also effort. You have to be conscious. I am in a place where I do want to satisfy. I do want to have this relationship working. And this is what I have to do. Sacrifice. Yeah? So get ready. Those of us who would want to just be, well, it's about me. No, you have to die to self in marriage as well. Not that you're losing yourself, but that you understand that as a man loves his wife and as a woman submits and be respectable to her husband. Again, women, as we talk about submission and respect, we have to ask God to help us. And I think that's why he put us in the Bible, because as it relates to us women, we could be in a place where we do the thing on our own, in our own way, not having nobody tell us, and especially within the Caribbean, knowing that most of us came out from broken families. We would have seen our mothers did it. So we didn't really, we figure we don't really need the man to tell us. So we go out and we do the thing and we bring it home. And then when he's ranting and raving, we wonder, well, why are you making noise? So I'll do this to the family. But a form of respect is you communicate with him. Hey, I saw this in the store. What do you think about getting it? He may say, no, we don't need that. But then you realize we really need it. Communicate some more in a different way. And then you might hear him say, hey, we could buy that for Christmas, and the relationship is not in any way where there's any issue happening because there is this lack of respect in the sense that you're disrespecting him because you figure, well, I could do what I want in here. No, right? So ladies, we are to submit and be respectable, and also gentlemen, we desire your love.
Right. At the end of the day, both you and your spouse, or you and your husband or your wife, will be happy.
Of course,
And the team comes to play.
Become stronger.
That's it.
Right,
So it's not
because,
about you, right?
Even as we talk about team, we have to know that a team that is divided, anything that is, and the Bible talks about it, that is divided, it cannot stand.
That's right.
But when you're thinking about your marriage, you are not each other's enemies. You are each other's teammates. And if it is you are looking to strengthen a team, you have to work together. Hey, I don't know about football, but when I go to football with my husband, I ask him, why is this guy doing this? Why is that guy doing that? And then when he explains it to me, I am up there screaming and shouting because I'm saying, hey, you need to kick it this way. And that sort of a thing. But sometimes, especially when you now get married, here's what you think. It's a competition. So I can do it better than you. And she can do it better than me. Oh, but she played, I say to persons, I don't know if you guys were there when we did the marriage seminar last time, about bread in my home. There was
Yeah.
initially we had an issue with the making of bread. My mother made the bread fluffy and soft and so on. His mom made it heavy, and he kind of liked it heavy. And at one point I said, "How about we meet each other halfway? How about we make it the Phillips way?" Right now, he is an excellent bread maker, while I just eat of it. All right, because we recognize it's a team effort here. We are going to make bread and make it the team Philip way. All
Yeah.
right. So all the couples that are online, remember you're a team. You're not each other's enemy.
All right.
Yeah, and that point is so critical. So as a personal question, uh, we have to first of all communication. So that sticks out. Communication sticks out. You cannot have a good no relationship at all without communication. But then another component in building good, intimate, naked is forgiveness. Now,
All right.
forgiveness is the glue that keeps relationship together.
Right.
So it is the glue because without forgiveness, there is no relationship at all, whether it's mother, father, friends with each other, parents, the children, husband and wife. If there isn't forgiveness, every relationship would resolve. So God made sure that we dissolve, and God made sure that we are had to cultivate a heart of forgiveness. That's why when they ask him how much times, he says it's not a number. It's not necessarily a number. It's you just have to cultivate a heart where you're willing to release people when they do you wrong, and you're willing to accept wrong when somebody when you did somebody wrong. And so the reality then is, so forgiveness must be a part of. And in some relationships, what happens is there is a spite. Sometimes when we're talking about sexual intimacy, sometimes women use sex as a weapon and use it as oh, so you threatened me, so I'm not going to give you sex.
No sex.
Now that is a dangerous precedent. That is the Bible says the only time we have permission to abstain from sex is if we're praying and fasting. So that's the biblical model. God knows that couples shouldn't just be using sex as if it's some kind of tool, but he's also saying the only time you will have separation that relates to not enjoying each other is if you say, okay, well, babes are going to do a 7 days, and I want to.
Babes, no. And ladies, I want to say this, babes, because sometimes we say we're fasting and praying, and it's a case of trying to avoid the sexual intercourse, right? No, the Bible says that we ought to get the permission from him. And here's what. There are times the Lord called me on a 21-day prayer and fast, and I would say, God, you know my husband. And in the midst of telling him he knows my husband, I would say, you need to speak to him, because here's what, he has to give me the okay to do that. And when I go to him, my husband would say, go right ahead, Linda, I understand. And he knows me by now that there's a specific time of the year that I shut down for that time. 21 days. And this has to be because the Lord is calling me to. And it's not a case of we just get up and going and fast. Christian people, it's not a case of we just getting up and fasting. It's the Holy Spirit calling you onto a fast. If you pay attention throughout the Bible, there was always a reason for the fast. There was always a cause for the fast. It's not that we just, okay, I'm staying away from food, so that means I'm fasting, so no sex tonight or no sex for the next 2 days. No, let it be that the Lord is calling you to take that time out for whatever reason. He's calling you to take that time out, and make sure that your husband is okay with it. For the person who is saying, but my husband unsaved, that's another case, but he still has to give permission. And here's what, God could minister to him as well and tell him, yeah, give her the okay. All right? Or him, if it is that your wife is unsaved.
Yeah, so and as we were talking about that, the reality then is so communication, forgiveness, critical, and also we have to understand that honoring. Now there's something called honoring. When you're honoring a person, it doesn't matter whether you're in front of them or you're behind them, and you honor the
Correct.
person. So you would always have a pleasant appreciation, and you want to respect them and honor them. So you would give them that. And a lot of the times when you hear people struggling with a lot of these things, challenges in marriage, sexually and intimacy with that, and they will say with the mother, the woman in want to do this and what, and they used to do that before. I hear a lot guys just complain, before we married, we had good sexual relation anyway on the beach and all over the place. Now all of a sudden nothing, so only the bed, only a certain time, I had to make appointment and all that kind of story. And they're starting to get frustrated. Now, one of the things that we didn't do effectively as a ministry and as a church is, somebody said it one time. Somebody said something one time about they have to worship lead in the morning, so they can't have sex Saturday night. And I had to rebuke that, because I felt you're kind of indicting something that God bless. You're kind of putting it in the way of something that is cursed, or something that is destructive, or something that will damage you. Now, if you want energy, that is a different thing. If you say I will get tired and I want to think, but withholding because you have to do something that that you call ministry, you have to understand your husband is your ministry, your wife is your ministry. So you minister to them, and you do ministry in other places. So I want you to put that in perspective. You don't treat sex as if it's a by-side thing, something you just do because you're married, so you should do that. It must come to the level of where you're actually honoring each other in that regard. You want to maintain that. Okay, sometimes men, for example, we have a problem if there's anything wrong with ability to have an erection or something to do with sexual anything, it becomes shameful. So a man kind of gets into a corner, gets into a hole, and don't understand. I want to say to men, is the 21st century. There's a solution. There's something to help you in any problem that you're having. We're in the 21st century. We're not in the time where there was nothing available, no help, no nothing. You can find help. And so sharing that, my wife talk about communication, sharing that with a trusted, with a medical, but something most of the time it's medical, or somebody that can help you pray through the experience, and feeling safe, feeling confident that this is not something that I should see shameful, because we don't know how we are. Sometimes accident happen and something damage you, and you're not able to satisfy your wife in that way again. What become of you? Are you less of a man because you don't have an erection? That is a dangerous precedent that is being set out there, and the church has to make sure we don't present that same kind of because God did not define us by our penis or our erect penis. That is not God's definition of a male. God's definition of a man is somebody that he created male, and that he created to be able to lead, to be able to love, to be able to have a family and all of that. So yes, it sometimes come across very tabooish if somebody have, but even in sexuality, we have to communicate and talk. My wife talk about it. We have to talk in the bedroom too. So you don't only talk over cooking, that your food tastes nice and your food, I love your cooking. You have to also talk about sex and sexuality. I like this. I don't like this. This is not pleasurable for me. This is pleasurable for me, because every person is different. So if I come into a relationship with a spoiled appetite, I did that. I was doing a sermon with that one time, and I say a lot of the times we have sexual problems because we appetite spoiled. You come out from a background where you had sex all over the place, and you didn't understand that spoils the ability when you settle down, and you now have to bring to bear a woman that is different, is unique, is you have to find new ways and learn that woman's body. For example, a woman's body is between 5 minutes 5 minutes to 13 minutes for an orgasm. Now, if you learn your spouse, you would know how to make the person have an orgasm. Now, if a man don't understand that, he don't have that kind of knowledge, he could satisfy himself, lead the lady there. She have not reached her climax as yet, and then he having fun, and so and fall asleep. Then worse, make it worse again, fall asleep after that, and then the lady strips him, and so you have an unfulfilled wife that is now wondering if that is all there is to sex and that is all there is to intimacy. And so you want to make sure, again, knowledge is power. I went and read up all these things because I felt I need to understand this powerful thing. If he could throw down the wisest and he could throw down the strongest, I need to know this thing. I need to understand what the power of this thing is. And so I decided that, and that is where the quest came from. And so God helped me, and I then did something. I don't know. I'm encouraging men to do it. I gave my sexuality to the Lord. I said, God, you have authority over my sexuality, because I don't know how to manage it. I can't, because I don't have the authority and the power to manage it. And the enemy knows that. He knows that he could, because I think it's in 2018, thereabout was the worst year for leaders, just falling one after the other with sexual promiscuity and perversion and problems, is because this thing is powerful. We none of us susceptible, none of us immune, none of us, and so we have to put the guards in place to make sure we protect each other. So I am accountable to this. She could call me on the phone and ask me where they, and according to the local, and I should be free to respond where I am, truthfully and honestly, because I'm accountable. There's an accountability that I have to have. So I have to communicate. I have to honor and respect. I have to forgive. And then I have to be accountable to my spouse. You have to be accountable to your spouse.
And with the accountability too, ladies and gentlemen, our phones must be very free. So the passcode and the pins and the finger thing that can't open the phone, all those things are part of accountability. There should be nothing hidden there, because we're now naked. We're a team. We're focusing on building something. And I know that in some cases you may have a job where you have that work phone that the person probably is not required to go into, especially if you're a counselor. So we understand that. But in terms of your personal phone, it should not be a hidden something from your spouse, because as my husband said, accountability. Anybody having a hidden this passcode that the wife cannot have will be a problem, or vice versa. What you have to hide, the question would come up, or the person would always be looking to seek to see if they can get the phone to try to, and that should not be. That should not be at all.
And that secrecy, you can see how that secrecy can, if it's with your device, then it can affect your life.
Of
You
course.
understand? So the secrecy again is, as we say, being naked. When you're naked, there's no secret. Your
Nothing.
wife should know, as you said, your weakest point. She should know you so good. But who exposes that to her? Is it something she or he just figure out on their own by praying, by asking the Holy Spirit? And we're not saying the Holy Spirit wouldn't do it, but then it could be shameful to the person. So I think it's better if you come and be real, and that's why a lot of conversation needs to take place. And the key thing with that, as I learned from you guys, it is not when it is exposed to you, or when your spouse decide to open up to you, that it become something where you say, "What? What's up? That's who you are?" That no,
No condemnation.
you have to understand the purpose of what you're doing. It is not the person is trying to be open because they want a better relationship with you. So people oftentimes open up to those who they trust, and then who they feel safe with. That's a word that I learned recently from reading a book. Safety in the relationship, right? So I shouldn't have to worry about or if I tell my wife, she'll go and tell her best friend, and
And her
she'll be
mother.
and her, and be part of the people that will embarrass my weakness, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
So she has to know that, or he has to know that when that is being opened up to you, it's for you to see how can we fight this thing together, because it's about us and not about one individual. All right. So I just wanted to throw this in there again. Mhm.
Powerful.
Correct. We also have that of observation. You said communication, but also observation, because sometimes the person may not say, but you see they're
Yeah.
reacting funny. And
Yeah.
there's a time when my husband snaps, snap, snap. I know what happening, so I know what to do when he snaps. You understand? So you have to know your spouse. You have to observe and know. Okay, I find he's just quarreling for no reason. What are you quarreling for? But then, okay, all right, got it, and I know what to do. Why? Because I know the man. So you have to know the man, or you have to know the woman. You understand?
Yeah.
And
So observation.
Paying attention to your
Mhm.
spouse. I mean, sometimes we take people for granted.
true.
Uh, you could say, well, they, they are wrong, and the reality is the same things that you do, because when we're talking about sexual intimacy, the same things that you do when you were dating, date nights, going out on certain memorable places that you would have created,
Hmm.
giving each other, sharing gifts, spending time together. There's one of the things that we encourage couples: throw the devices, put the devices out the window. If you have children, it's a little different. You put them to sleep, and you have a one-on-one time where you check in. The check-in is how are we going? How are things? Are we still? Do you still love me the way you did in the past? Am I still your best? If the answers are no to these things, that is not the issue. The answer being no is not the problem. What can we when I'm doing certain sessions, I say to the person, I want all you to be totally honest with me here, because we cannot go to a doctor and tell him your foot hurting you and it's your head, and he go and do a scan on your foot, and then the problem still stay in there. Tell us what is the issue so that we can work along together. And so a lot of the times, transparency and nothing to hide is where you find certain levels of intimacy, because I'm now exposing myself to you so that at least the problem is sorted out. Now, when that happens, what we have is a gelling, a closer gelling. So the same things you do, date, you go out, you lime together, you spend time together, because time is going to invest, and we know that family comes into play, and you get busy and you forget your spouse, and you forget, well, wait, now I have to be also satisfying this person emotionally and otherwise, and that gets left out because of children. So we understand the dynamics, but the same things apply. You still have to invest. It doesn't happen by default. It doesn't happen by, if you leave it, you're going to stay and you're going to die, and then eventually you become roommates. Even though you're having sex together, it is not the level of intimacy that you want, because you're not roommates, you're not connecting on no other level, but you're just physically having intercourse. And so the one thinking about what you're cooking, and the next one thinking about something else, and you're in two different worlds, but yet still having an intimate time. And so you want to make sure that you do the same things that you were doing when you're dating in order to continue to build. Carve out time for it, because it's intentional. God said that you're going to spend the rest of your life with this person, and so you want to make it sure it's intentional, and you're working on it. I saw a question. I don't know.
But before that question, even as my husband said, you become roommates, and then we ask the question sometimes after we'd have seen older couples would have spent years together, and the children would have gone their separate ways. You see that they got a divorce, and you wonder, well, what happened? Mr. and Mrs. So and so was together for so long, and all of a sudden, know that they're gone. It's because basically they were gone before. It's just that because the children were there, they were more or less together. But now that the house is empty, there's nothing, there's no friendship, there's nothing. As a matter of fact, in most cases, they become strangers. Yeah. So you have to ensure that you invest in your marriage. And also, as last week I made mention, about the marriage council, the marriage seminar. Sometimes we say, oh, that's a lot of money, but here's what you're making: a lifetime investment. So when you hear that they're coming up, jump on it, especially
Okay.
once they're Christian conferences. You jump on it because you know God is in the center. And as we say that, we would have an advertisement to make sometime later
We
about
send
getting
it. They send it over.
something that's covered up. All right, but we do have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
So before I take the question,
Mhm.
there was one other thing that I was thinking about the because of the relationship and how relationship goes. What you would have is if you don't spend the quality time and if you don't have become friends, because friendship is one of the lasting virtue in relationship. After children come and go, you still have to be friends. After sex come and go because you get old and you're no longer able, you still have to be friends. So in the older ages of your life, you still could laugh together and still could remember fond memories and what happened. Friendship is one of the instrumental pillars that we don't tout about a lot, but is a very critical pillar of long-lasting relationships. True friends stay together despite the Bible says friends are loyal to each other, and so you see where the loyalty could come in if you develop a friendship, because friendship, cultivating a good friendship in marriage is very important. One of the things you also want to do is to ensure that when you as you develop your relationship and your marriage, people you have to understand people are watching. People pay attention.
Very close.
A young man mentioned something the other day about me and how and my parenting and how I deal with my spouse. I didn't realize he was looking. We just had him over and had the children, and we had, but they pay attention, and you're not doing it because of persons around. You're doing it
Pretense.
because that is naturally what you cultivate in your life. You want to make sure that the biblical model is promoted. You want to promote the model that God has. And I believe there's no better model than what I see in Ephesians for relationship, that a man love his wife and a woman respect her. Those two things, there is no telling where that relationship will go if if the man honor his side and the woman honor her side,
right.
man, that thing it becomes explosive. And so it's not that I accusing you of doing it and you accusing me. I have to honor my command didn't come from you. So it is not my wife that said to me to love her. It is God that said to me to love your spouse. So
ask
so
God.
so God is the one that should help. Then my wife, it is God that says to her, then you must submit or respect your husband. So I'm not asking I shouldn't be fighting with you to do your role. I have to do mine and allow God to work in you to do yours. And in the end, we get a beautiful image. And so I want to encourage persons. It is going to take time. We are not perfect. We had our wranglings and for a few years in our marriage, and we decide this thing is getting tense, and so somebody invite somebody in, talk with us, because marriage is a building. It's something you're building, and you cannot just sit by and just say, "Well, it's gonna happen." You have to work at it. You have to. There are problems that you would have personally as a male. There are situations that you're dealing with, and you have to be able to collectively solve them. You have a next generation to bring up. When children watch their parents, they're supposed to go away with something that I want to transfer into my family of origin and into their family of origin. So you want to do that also. Go ahead, Sabi, and then the question. I think
The question. You have a question. We have two questions, but someone was just saying they had another question. If that person could type that question again.
They're saying from Melissa
Oh.
Is this a question? If both people are coming from places of brokenness,
Oh, yeah. We missed
then
one.
they likely need outside help to get to that place.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
true.
no, that's just a comment then. That's not a question. But you can put back up the question from Trevor.
Right.
All right.
So he's asking which is correct or acceptable. Should a woman propose to a man or a man propose to a woman?
God, Trevor.
that is great. That is based on culture
motivation.
and time. Here's why I say culture and time. Time, in the sense that initially in the biblical time, it wasn't a situation where the relationship was left hanging. So parents were involved on both sides.
Yeah.
You obviously had a dowry, so you had a price, something to bring to the father of the bride, to make sure. But the both parties got involved in the whole relationship, and so they dated. They got time of dating. When I say date,
Coaching.
not as we know,
Coaching.
court. They got time to court, so the both parents will ensure that they're together, bring them in the same place, they having fellowship, they connecting, and then eventually when they say that they're going to get married, they do an engagement. Now, an engagement in that time was more serious than what we know now. Engagements then, and let me bring a real example. Joseph was engaged to Mary, but if she got pregnant outside of being married, they ain't married yet, she was being stoned. So you see the seriousness of engagement at that time. And so time brought that bearing to it. Then the reality, then later on, we had, I believe it was around 1906 or 1964, some date in the early 1910, I believe, that physical dating started, where because people used to family date. They used to come, as a matter of fact, some of the older person on this listening to this would know about writing letter to bring
Yeah.
home to their parents, to ask for a spouse, thing. So time changed the approach. So
Yeah.
if it was family total, everybody engaged. Then dating came about and changed the social dynamics of it, where now two people going out on their own, whereas it used to be a group going out. Now they're going out on their own. Then you had the change of now in this present time, there seems to be a shift where the women are becoming more aggressive as it relates to wanting to solidify the relationship. So they are moving ahead and saying, I want to marry to you, instead of the male marrying to the female.
Man,
Now,
get relax.
in, and I see they propose all over the place. They have it all over social media. They propose to the man, would you marry to me? And all of that. Now, the right and wrongness of that, I don't think we should get there first. I think we should pay attention to the journey, how the thing progressed from whole families being involved, two parties starting to do their own thing. Then now you have people, they've gone so far with only two people. Sometimes parents are the last person to know, I'm dating this fella, or this boy dating this girl, or this. And you have this isolation from wisdom and from advice and from counsel that might be important for a solid foundation. Now you have it turning over, where it's now becoming flip side, where it's no longer a male thing to propose, is a female, is females are free to do it also. So I wouldn't go into the right and wrongness, but I would say, based on the structure I see in Ephesians, the biblical model has always been that the man is the one that pursues, the one that protects, the one that provides for, the one that loves, the one that that's a model that God would have given unto us as it relates to relationships. But should I say, because time changed, we should throw out that model? I would not say that at all. I would say we have a shift in the social dynamics of the couples now, and people are feeling free and comfortable. Now, if a man feels comfortable with his woman proposing to him, now I can't go in and tell him he's less of a male or less of a man, or whatever. That if they agree on that, then that works for them. But our context, how you nurture your child, how you bring up your children, that is going to govern how they respond later on. So society would then have to accept it and then make it generalized and then eventually become a norm in our society. But until then, the biblical model, I believe, we growing up, our children should still encourage them in the biblical model, and
Yeah.
encourage them into, hey, guy, God has a serious responsibility on your life. You have a responsibility to take care of and to protect. Now,
Yeah.
If that shouldn't change, however, if the woman propose, it shouldn't change that the man should have his role and responsibility of being the head of the home, right? And I always say head is not boss, head is servant, according to the biblical model. All right.
Yes. Yes.
I would like to add with this regarding a response to this question. There's a portion in the Bible, I believe, in Genesis that say, or if it's Genesis, I'm not sure, but he who finds a wife finds a good thing. So
Yes.
I feel like finding is
The man's job.
you understand. So
The man pursue it.
if the woman propose, I feel like the man he ain't doing the job, and based on how this thing start, it could end up in a bad place because she would say, in the first place, I was the one who wanted to marry you, so I marry you. You didn't marry me. You didn't make me feel. So I still feel it's, although people say the word man could be a bit generous, but I believe God was speaking to men in particular, and the man that finds his wife, he finds a good thing, and put yourself in that position of that man who found his wife. When you propose to your wife and she said yes, you, as a man, you feel like, hey, I get you. Yes, I
Right,
say.
right,
So I
right.
think woman could express that feeling. Woman go down on their knees. I can see it
I
being
can see
right.
it
So
either.
I was
You see that was it. The wrongs socially,
yeah,
that would have, it would have journeyed to that, because I mean we don't know about that, but it has become that. But a lot of other things in relationship has changed. I mean, a lot of other things. So that is only one. That is one dimension of the relationship that has changed over the time that we watching. I mean, we paying attention to it. We would have to respond to it, of course, definitely, because then you would have to train up your child in a way that they know there's a biblical model. There's a model that God established, and we prefer that you use that model. But socially, you would have to understand that socialization. Remember, socialization changes how communities and how people do things. And so some things that are generally accepted now might not be generally accepted later on. And so there will be shift. But the biblical model is cast in stone. And here's why I say that. God never makes a mistake. You see,
At
if
all.
it's a man that tell me that, then I go just throw it aside. That could change with time. But when God established something, he speaks in eternity. So that lives out time. So it's not like God waiting for something to happen so that he go change his mind and then, because the society turned this way, then I go change my mind. No. God makes prescription. He prescribes things and declares things. And I want us to understand that. But so he that finds a wife finds a good thing and obtain favor from the Lord. Proverbs 18:22. That's where it is.
But even to that story of Isaac and Rebecca, that story was such a beautiful love story, where it is that we recognize that the servant was given a description of a woman to look for, and how he prayed, and right before he prayed, right after he prayed, the same profile came before him, and so on. And throughout the Bible, as we look at these love stories, we would have recognized, except for what's her name? Ruth. Somebody might say, what about Ruth? She approached the man.
Oh, yes.
Out the majority of the times you would have seen the man was the one pursuing the woman. So again, as my husband said, it depends on culture, one, and what the person would accept. But again, as believers, we would want to stay within the biblical model.
Yeah, and to add again, I'll go back to Genesis now. Actually, that's a portion in Genesis that for what purpose a man shall leave his mother and father cleave.
Right.
So
To his
the
wife.
man, I find everything pointed in direction the man's supposed to find her, and that's
Yeah, that's what I said. Biblical model is different. The biblical model is the model, but and we cannot slight or not pay attention to social dynamics, because even though God establishes that we should honor Him and we should pay attention to what He prescribes. Remember, we have the Bible says, broad is the way that leads. So you have a large percentage of people that will not take the prescription that God is giving. We have to now become instrumental in training up the way that God that he should go or she should go, so that when they old, they would not depart from it. That concept comes into play even in the choosing of a spouse or the choosing or the way things happen. But I know the aggression is there. I mean, females have become very aggressive in this modern time.
Boy, see that
When
again.
being liberated, sometimes you just have that liberation where they're free to go ahead and do such, because sometimes they may be coming to that man, and we know within the biblical model, the man comes with the home and everything to provide. And in some of the instances when these ladies come, they come with everything. So all the guy needs to do is move in with his clothes when he enters. You understand?
That's a whole other topic there.
Individual, because not every man would want that the lady has everything, but another man would say, wow, she has everything. You look at the flip side to everything and make your decisions. But as believers, we are to maintain God's principles. Yeah.
That's
question.
We have a question.
Yes, let's take that last question.
Interesting question. I know the answer, but what about when you and your spouse fall out?
Should the couple remain in the same bed?
And there's so much dynamics behind that one, but I'll let you speak. My 2 cents. But I'll give my answer first, though. Yes, sleep in the same bed. And go ahead.
Oh, you believe that they should sleep in the same bed? Yeah.
Yes, sleep in the same bed.
Here's why. Here's what happens: upset and vexation. We have to let's be realistic on it. There are times when you sleep on the same bed, but you're sleeping back to back, right? There are times when you turn back. Now, the Bible have a prescription for this. It says, "Let not the sun go down on your wrath or your anger, or when you're vexed." Now, the reason for the sun not going down on your wrath and your anger is because in God's mind, there is room when there is a falling out and an anger persists and confusion and back and forth. We can give the devil a foothold. We can give him a foothold into our relationship if we leave it to stay too long. So the prescription really from biblical is to solve it quickly. Make sure you try to solve it quickly. Sometimes you try to do it before the sun goes down and it doesn't happen. Sometimes you sleep on the couch, one sleep on the couch, one sleep on the bed. But the intent must be that we solve this thing so that it does not give the enemy any sort of deep trench into the relationship where he comes and he disrupts your fellowship, he disrupts your communication, he disrupts. Because here's something: when you sleep on a matter that you're vexed about, you get up in the morning with a whole file page of rebuttals and angles and things that you could see, and I didn't see that before. And so what you do now is, instead of solution driven, you're now trying to prove a point, or you're trying to defend your position. And so that takes to bear. Now, again, conflict resolution, which is something that you also have to, how do you resolve conflict at home? That is important too. You resolve conflict by confrontation. The Bible gives the model. If you have an ought against your brother, go to them. So it's confrontation that helps solve conflict. So you're not going and call somebody outside and tell them the whole story and all that. You're dealing with the matter, dealing with it, because human conflict is normal and natural. As long as you're in the same house, in the same space, doing a family, building a unit, there's going to be conflict. How you respond when a conflict happens is where the genuineness and the strength of the team is seen. So if for that night we sleep, even if we sleep on the separate mattress, you have an extra room in the house or whatever, the team is not damaged. We are upset to the point where you probably need a timeout. You just need a little breathing space, and all of that. But that is my teammate there. That is not my enemy. You see, the problem comes when I think, okay, you're the worst, but you are the problem. And that is where you have conflict and challenge. So I would say realistic, ideally, I would say stay on the same bed, but realistically, there are times you might have separate rooms sleeping, but the reality is that you're not enemies. So you know that you have to resolve the thing as quick as possible. Days and weeks mustn't pass and you still have this thing hanging over your heads.
Forgiveness.
And
one of the things you ought not to fool yourself with is that of getting up in the morning and praying, Lord, and thank you today, and you did not resolve the issue. And let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, our tone when we're resolving the issue is very important, because sometimes the tone of you attacking the person, you are going to come up with a fence. That person is going to put up a fence. They wouldn't be able to hear you because you said that and you did this. No, I felt like this when you did that. You communicated, and you'll probably might end up reaching to work late, but I wouldn't. It's not that I'm recommending that you reach. The important thing is that you resolve that issue, and as that issue is resolved, again, the intimacy in the bedroom or wherever, probably that day you may just end up being home for 30 minutes of lunch and the next 30 minutes of a quickie, and then you go back to work.
And it's that. But on the point of on the point of not letting the sun go down on a rat, and I think most people think is the sun they give the attention to, because what if you get upset? What if you get upset in the night when the sun is already down?
Right.
You understand? So you have to make sure, as you said, I think before you go and sleep, try to work it out. And even if it takes 4 o'clock in the morning, I believe if you keep that common idea in mind, that is us and not me, and someone becoming humble enough to understand when they are wrong. What's going on here? Yeah, someone understanding they may offend somebody, and the offended person expressing how they feel, because as you say, sometimes you rub people wrong. You understand? And we are humans, so we have to be willing to always keep in the picture. We want our marriage to work. I love you. You respect me. It's about us. Once you keep that mindset in the forefront of your head, and we are a team, you can never go wrong. But if you start thinking about you more,
you and me.
That's dangerous. And let me just add to that. Even though you made mention of 4 o'clock in the morning, and again, knowledge of your spouse is important, because if I want to trash it out 4 o'clock in the morning and he's sleepy, here's what I get upset. So that's another offense that's coming here, because I want to talk and he wants to sleep. So we have to be wise as well when we're dealing with the matter. That he is somebody that before he sits down he just gone, then it's not the best sign, simply because you know who he is. But as alert as he gets, you become alert as well and say, hey, you know what, something you said, something you did, I didn't like it, and so on. And be open. Sometimes he might just be in a place of defense or whatever. But one of the things that I tend to do is pray, Lord, while I'm discussing or while I'm sharing or communicating whatever, I am praying, Lord, speak to your son. He knows, you know how to deal with him. And then sometimes I may get a defense at first, and then he said, you know what, yeah, I realize. Or even with me, it happens with me sometimes. So we have to be open, because if we're not, we are going to get offended again. And one of the things that folks know about me is that when coming to offense, I am ready to deal with it. Whether it's in my marriage, whether it is in church, wherever it is, I am ready to deal with it, because I've had my experiences with offense. I have seen what offense can do, including bring onto your body illnesses that doctors cannot find. So you spend a lot of money, and I
Right.
don't know what's happening to you. No, I don't know. And it has to do with something that you became offended and you never dealt with it. So
True.
sometimes we have to pay attention to those things. And ladies, for those of us who have not forgiven our husband, so that thing he said or did, or the way he watched somebody else, let us be ready to communicate that with him, and be also ready to let it go, so that your team can be strengthened.
All right.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
as we are coming down, I think there's some prescriptive things um, that Dr. Gill gives as it relates to how you maintain intimacy in your sexual intimacy, and he was talking about honoring. So you dedicate at least an hour or so to your spouse, to meet your spouse needs, to make sure you're meeting your spouse need, and ask questions, talk. Am I satisfying you? Is it well with us? You ask pertinent questions and you get, and I believe if you're open enough, the person was going to give you relation. We had a situation where a woman said, I taught my husband how to have sex with me, and now I'm enjoying it. And so you could actually make sure you share your spouse, you share your needs, you make sure you help along the way, so that you're on common ground. Then make thoughtful claim requests on your spouse to meet your relational needs. So I am lacking here, and I think I need you to come up a little bit here. I feel I need a hug a little more often. You're not. I find your space out, and you're not touching. We cooking in the kitchen, and you rub your hand on my shoulder, or something to indicate that I'm here. I'm there. I'm paying attention. I'm right. So little on non-sexual touches also helps with sexual intimacy in marriage. All right. So not every time we hug, we go in the bedroom. That is not. They're just a hug for just the sake of hugging and appreciation, and I'm loyal, right? And so I'm there. Then the thing that caused you to fall in love, you repeat them. What caused you? What you are attracted to in this person? That is what you maintain and cultivate, right? Explore your spouse soul through questions. What are you interested in? What makes you happy? What are some of the things you're fearful of? What's some of your temptations? Things that causes you to get weak and not focus. So you're helping each other grow. And then he says there's only 5 problems we have in marriage, and this book is called Marital Intelligence. One is ignoring each other's needs. Please don't ignore the needs of it. If your spouse is talking, communicating, sharing, don't ignore the needs, because we are supposed to meet each other's needs, right? Immature behaviors. Again, we talked about it earlier. Competing. So I could do it better. I can parent better than you. I can cook better than you. I can this better than you. And that competition does not solve anything. It actually digs hole in your marriage. And then the person feel, well, you winning and I'm always losing, and nobody wants to feel like a loser. So you come out of a situation like that and be hurt and damaged. So immature behaviors damages relationships. So maturity is needed. And then he says clashing temperaments. When I am a sanguine and you're a choleric, and somehow you can't see eye to eye on certain things, because one always late and the next one always on time, and then you're clashing over that all the time. Always have quarrel and clashing temperaments. You learn your personality, learn your spouse personality, and then it helps you now get closer to the person. I know why they're doing this. They're doing this because That is how they're made. God wired them a particular way, and I can rewire, and I was never meant to rewire. And mind you, every spouse here listening, you cannot rewire your husband, and you cannot rewire your wife. So you have to accept your the person you married to, and work through the. As a matter of fact, the Gottman Institute did a survey, and they said 69% of the problems that we have in marriages are recurring. So it's not solution driven, but it's more management. How do I manage these conflicts? And so it's managing of them, instead of, sometimes we feel you have to solve everything. Everything must be solved. Everything must come down. And men sometimes get into that trap because we are created to always want to solve things. Sometimes the lady talk to you and she want a word, she just wants you to listen. She just wants you to listen to her, and you know, nothing to solve. There's nothing to come up and say, okay, well, 1x is 1, and that is not the issue. Her time might just be, I want to express myself to you, and I just want you to listen. And so sometimes hearing herself, she gets some answers for some deep truths and things happening. So clashing temperaments is very important. Find out your nature. If you as a couple do the personality profile, find out who you are. What are some of the strengths and weaknesses of that type of personality? It helps. It's the only thing, but it helps develop closeness and bonding, and so you enjoy your sex even more, knowing and understanding the person. Competing relationships, men, woman, boy, girl, please don't have any other relationship that your spouse is competing with. So whether from God to children. So sometimes men are competing with God because they want their spouse, sometimes they're not saved or something, they want their spouse to be around or to do something, and they're never around because they're either in church every day or they're doing something outside. No relationship must be competing so much that the person feel I'm a second fiddle. The only person we are second to, obviously, is God. We know that. But you going in church all the time is not necessarily meaning that you're putting God first. You could probably be solving a need issue or something happening with you. You want to make sure that you're not having relationships that are competing so much so that your spouse crying out for your attention and your time, and somebody else gets it or something else gets it. All right. And then you have past baggages, which is things we come in with. So you see the amount of things that we have to deal with before we can think about true sexual intimacy. Past baggages, things you come in a relationship with, you're brought in from some background, some past issue. And so I would encourage anybody to read that book, Marital Intelligence by Dr. Gill. It's a powerful tool for helping with intimacy on every level. All right.
Also know get to know your spouse's love language. So for instance, for me, I tend to like little things. So he goes to the supermarket and he brings me back a cashew nut, and because he knows I like cashew nut. And probably he was coming in the yard and he saw a little, what we call bush, but it has a flower in it, and he brings it in, and that for me is something that speaks a language, speaks love to me. And there are different types of love languages, and everybody do have one that is domineering. So know what is yours and know what is your spouse's, so that you can communicate that. Yeah. Team Sabizan, you would have missed out on that, the love language, and also that of the personality profiling that
We got
we
the
did.
next one. We got the next one.
All right.
Because I really think that
Yeah.
sessions like
Come back up.
these should be not just once a year. I really think that as people of God, you see how we have like youth ministries once a week, or men's ministry or some. I think sessions for married couples should be something that is incorporated into a weekly schedule. When people
Wonderful.
wait once a year to get information
Yeah.
like this from mean, sometimes your marriage suffers because of this. You did not get certain information that you might need to, interactive sessions. I really think that we need more of these sessions.
Yeah, definitely. You
Yes,
can't
people
survive
of
on
God.
the premarital counseling
Yeah.
alone.
Yes,
It's just
important.
not.
You
It
need
is
the
important,
posts.
but
You
it's
need the
not enough.
yes.
Someone asked a while
Yep.
ago, do you guys do counseling? Someone asked me that question. I think what is we doing? And
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we
yeah,
do
so I'll tell a brother
premarital.
later. You say if someone wants to schedule a marital counseling, what does one do? So it's a private thing. So I'll send you the individual number,
Okay,
and if
Yeah.
if it's
And
okay, I can
you
send
can
you a number.
share ours with them as well.
and you
Yeah,
can share our numbers with them.
Yeah.
cool. So I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay.
But it has been an awesome conversation,
I
and
think
I
so.
see my wife made a note about once a month or something a while ago. There, I'll keep it. She note.
Oh,
I don't. You see, I don't have a problem with this because here's what the conversation. In order for change to happen, she's correct. In order for change to really take place, there's sometimes you go to a conference, and when you come out of the conference, you only apply the thing later on down in your life when you go back to the notes and go back over the material and all of that. So it's the same with that. If you do it regularly, people kind of see in the mushrooming of it in their life and in their family, and they're realizing, okay, when I take the truth and I apply it, is then it becomes real to me. And so one-offs don't help a lot of the times with these kind of intimate and delicate conversations. One-off is not the best. Um,
yes.
mhm.
So, guys, I don't know what to say. We've been here for almost 2 hours, and it feels like
Yeah.
a short
Wow.
time.
Oh, yes.
It has been a really interesting conversation. And thanks to you all for joining us this afternoon. I really wish we could go on and on because it really is an intriguing and interesting conversation to me. As a matter of fact, it's one of my passions. It's
All
marriage
right.
and one of our passions to talk about marriage and building up marriages. And so it's something that has been heavy on my heart for years now.
Us.
You know,
Right.
yeah, us on our hearts.
I like you.
Tears,
The is that
yes,
it's been a while since we've been
No
at
worries.
this thing
yes,
with the little that we were able to get from
yeah,
Google, but I think God is doing a tremendous job in our lives,
yes,
and so far so good. I believe hopefully if it's God's will, I'll do what I feel so and I feel. So we might
mhm.
write a book or something, you never know. So we might be
At
coming
Yeah.
some
to you for
point,
some pointers to put in
information.
the book, but
Right,
Yeah,
right.
We're open.
We're
We're
open,
but we
open.
yeah, yeah.
really think, it's this part, this thing about marriage and marriage relationships and getting people together and making sure that marriages are strengthened. It's really something that, is heavy on our hearts. And we believe that God really has called us onto this kind of ministry. And
Right.
it's important to Him. It's
Yeah.
important that marriages stay together. And we see the enemy attacking so many marriages. He attacks the marriage because he knows, he
Yeah, yeah.
knows, the powerful things that can
yeah,
come out of this relationship, that
Yeah.
team working
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Of
Team.
course.
It can be,
yeah,
oh,
The
yes.
Bible, the Bible said it simply. He put it in a simple way. When two touch a thing, you understand, and agree on it.
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
yes.
There's power
So
in
far,
there's power in agreement when it comes
Oh,
to a
yes.
spouse, husband and
Oh,
wife.
yes.
It's
Oh,
there's
yes.
power in agreement, and so
Yeah.
and there's no telling what you could accomplish when two people decide we are in this together and we are going to build God's model and God's method of the relationship. Many persons are going to be blessed by it, and so continue doing that, doing this ministry.
And even
Yeah.
as we make a mention of team, we know that we have an opponent. So always look out for the opponent. Yeah,
Yeah.
that person that
Common
will come
enemy.
in and
Yeah.
sometimes, hey, it's the family.
Mm.
I mean, in terms of our relatives. So we have to look out for that as well. Remember, you are building your team. You came from a team. You are building your team now.
See.
It's now
True.
Team
True.
Sabizan. It's now Team
Yes.
Philip. Even though
Yes.
we're coming from Team Redhead and Team Philip, Team
Right.
Philip, but
Philip.
we are creating our own Team Philip.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So,
that's
what
right.
do we want out of our team? How do we see ourselves in the next how many years and so? Because teams do have plans.
That's right.
True,
So
true.
remember that. It's not that you're going aimless. Okay, we're a team and whatever comes, we're doing. No,
Yeah.
you have a plan.
That's right.
So God
That's right.
bless you and thank you
Thank
for
you very
having us. It
much.
was a
Yes.
pleasure.
It
Yeah, we
has
are
been
so
a
grateful
pleasure
today.
having you. It
Yes, yes,
has
it
been
is
a
good.
pleasure having you. We have so many comments coming from the chat. I don't even know where to start with the comments, but
Yeah.
I think that our
People are
audience, they
blessed. They are
have
blessed.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed the conversation
Mhm.
today. So thank you to all those of you who listened, whether it was on Facebook, on YouTube, whether you're listening on
On
www.hopefmgrenada.com,
the radio,
on the radio
103.1
103.1 FM,
FM. Mhm.
wherever you're listening. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for joining us this afternoon, this evening. All
Mhm.
right. And don't forget, if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, YouTube, you can do so. Don't forget to click on the bell to get a notification
Click
so
all.
that you can get some more of these conversations. We are on 24/7.
Mhm.
Hope FM is
Right.
on 24/7, but Team Family will be back again another
Next
week
Sunday.
next Sunday.
I won't be here.
Next Sunday
I'm a
again.
guest.
Okay, he's a guest
I'm a
on
guest
today.
for that
All
type of
right.
conversation, apparently. Whenever it comes to I realize that Pastor Joachim, whenever
Yes.
it comes to this type of the aspect, I'm a guest, me and my partner Trevor. So it's all good.
Well, you know your position.
Myself and Adonna will be back next week, Sunday again. No, I think Adonna will be out next week, Sunday, so we might just be off for next Sunday.
I
But
thought
the
you invited
following
me again.
Sunday, we'll see what happens, okay? But don't forget, Team Family Sunday evenings from 4:15. All right. I don't know if you have any last words to share before we go to the Phillips.
I just want to encourage those of you who are wed, looking forward to becoming wed, that God is the one who would have put you together or is putting you together. And the fact that He is doing so, we're encouraging you to allow Him to be your coach, your first coach. He would allow you to have mentors on the side and so on, but allow God to teach you, men, how to love your wives, because many of you are coming from homes where the love that you saw is not that of the ideal, but because God knows the woman that He's putting you with, He knows how she wants to be loved. So ask Him to teach you to be that husband, and not just that husband, but that father and that leader that He expects you to become. Because at the end of the day, you have to answer to God as to how you took care of that lady that He blessed you with. And ladies, we are to honor and respect our husbands, submit to them. And many of us are strong willed because we grew up in homes where mommy took charge and she did a good job. A lot of us think we did not need our dads, but here is what we needed them. As much as we think we're strong because mommy brought us up strong, we could be stronger, but daddy wasn't there. So here's what we ask God how to, Lord, teach me how to respect this man and teach me how to be that mother you're calling me to be, that sometimes when he is out and I have to do it, with the children, that you're going to give me the grace to be able to do it in a way that at the end of your life or even before, your children could look back and say, hey, my parents left a legacy with me. And understand that for everything we do, God is watching, He's taking note. And again, as I say to persons, you have to answer for yourself. So, whatever the Lord is asking you to do in your team, having the personality that you have it coming from the background that you're coming from, having a desire and the purpose and the destiny that He has placed before you. Let us be willing to walk in it and accomplish it according to God's purpose and plan for your lives. God bless you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. And so it's a privilege and a pleasure, all of you listening and being here with us today. I love the fact that God is really declaring His model for sexual intimacy and marriage in through the program. Through, I believe that God is using this medium to. We hear a lot of bad news and bad things, And so there's a space for good news and good things happening. And so I want to declare that God intended for every marriage to have 100% chance of success. And so anything that comes against that, the enemy have plots against it. I want to say to you that God is the creator of marriage. He was the one that engineered it. And so you can go back to him when you have challenges, and then wise counsel from people. When there is persons that have been the road, walk the road, and they have wise counsel, you can talk to them too. And look at marriages that are working and try to model some of the positives that are coming out. And for the young person looking on, I would say to you, when it comes to sexual intimacy, Solomon said some things that are very wise in songs. He said, do not wake up love before it's time.
Yeah.
Because you see, what you're going to interfere with is so powerful, you can't put it back to sleep. And so you don't wake it up. Leave it at the time where it's ready and you could explore and you could enjoy. Leave it for that time. And I'm telling you, you're not missing out anything. You'll enjoy it even more. You will not have the competitions in your head and the drawing out. You will enjoy it even more with the person that you love. And so I'm encouraging that. And so God bless all of you. And we'll see again. I'm sure we will we will see again.
I hope next time you can make a trip down to the studio too, you know?
all of that too.
That would be great.
Yes, all of that.
Thanks again so much, and may the blessings of the Lord be upon you, your household. Thanks again for joining us on Hope FM. Blessings. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Right.
Blessings.
Bye-bye.
All right.
All right, Lady Savvy, very interested and informative session.
Very informative, very interesting, guys. It was really a pleasure to be able to speak and discuss that very important topic with the Phillips, with Team Philip. And don't forget, we have more discussions like these, similar discussions about family and relationships and marriages here on Team Family. So continue to keep it locked to 103.1 FM. All right, have a blessed evening from the Sabbies.
God bless you.
Have a great week.
All right.
Said I woke up this morning with problems on my mind. Didn't know what to do, I wasn't feeling so fine. So I put on some music, and you know what kind of gospel music with anointing really suits my mind. It was like a prescription that the doctor prescribed. Felt the Holy Spirit moving way down deep inside. So I picked up my hands and I started to smile, cause Jesus changed my situation. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, hey, happiness in my soul. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, oh yeah, happiness in my soul. So many people feeling down right now, cause the money in the pocket is like a dry ground. It's getting rough now. You're living from hand to mouth, you're feeling depressed. There is no hope in tomorrow. If I had hope in this world, I would be miserable. I'm trusting God, it makes my life more comfortable. Don't worry, God is in control. His presence gives us peace and take it on sorrows. I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, happiness in my soul. Now I feel joy, happiness in my soul. I feel joy, yeah, happiness in my soul. Said this